All right, we're live.
Oh, hey everybody. I thought she was going to jump in and say hey everybody, but because I was struggling trying to push the button because my finger's too big. But hey everybody, welcome to He Said, She Said. I'm Willie. This is Rachel, my beautiful, amazing, and loving, gorgeous wife. I just love her to life, y'all. So, we are here jumping in with a topic on marriage. Yes. And that topic is
why your marriage is better than you think. So I'm going to go ahead and start this off because I was reading a book, and I actually started reading the book because I was irritated and frustrated with Willie. And so I was like, I'm going to read this book because this is going to give me the solutions that I need to get over whatever the frustration was. I'm almost sure it's probably because he wasn't listening to me, but that's just a guess because, you know, we were working through that. So, or I felt he wasn't listening to me. He said he was, but I was repeating everything. So that almost indicated he wasn't. But nonetheless, so I went ahead and I started reading this book. And then as the book started to explain, if you are this kind of person and if you're going through this, then this is the book for you. So it started highlighting these different points to let you know that this is the book for you. But as I listened to each point, I was like, well, that's not necessarily my problem, or that's not what I'm struggling with, or that's not my frustration. And then it started chapter 1. And I realized that I probably shouldn't be reading the book because I didn't fit the dynamics of the person I should be reading this marriage book that particular moment. So that's when I started thinking, like, you know what? I'm still really frustrated. So my frustration is valid, but maybe my marriage isn't as bad as I think it is. Maybe it's just some other dynamic that I specifically need in our marriage to cultivate it a little bit differently. But it's not that it's a bad marriage.
Right.
So we wanted to talk about that a little bit because we just want to encourage people. Why are you laughing?
Because just the marriage. It's not a bad marriage. But there are some challenging times.
There definitely are challenging times. And to be completely honest, one thing that we realize is that in especially being a blended family, being remarried, there are often times where we can go back to the past relationships that we've been in and look and kind of gauge the dynamics of our marriage versus another relationship. Right. And I think that when we do that, we don't cultivate what this marriage is supposed to look like. So there are times when Willie and I would get into arguments and he would say things like, well, in previous relationships, this was okay. And I would have to say, but my expectation of this relationship is different. Or I would still, be experiencing those things in the previous relationships. I have a different expectation out of this because you're a totally different person and you've kind of set a different standard for me.
Right. And that actually was an eye opener because me, and I'll say generally speaking, I don't like to really generalize the male or the female perspective, but we've seen, generally speaking, that men are more logical. Where women are more emotional. So in my mind, it just was, hey, this is some stuff you dealt with in the past. I'm not even doing half of that stuff that you've dealt with in the past. So
what do you have to complain about?
Yeah, you're good. You're doing better. And
I would say
go ahead.
And I would say that's great, but for this marriage and for this relationship, my expectation is different. I just don't feel that, this should be going on or this is bothering me because of the level of expectation or the standard that you set in our relationship.
Right. So I think the very first thing I would say that we need to do is we need to clear the standard, clear the bar, reset the bar, just like you kind of have a time clock, or when you doing a race and you're running a lap. If you don't start from the time that you ran the lap the first time, you actually just reset it because you want to get a new gauge of if you did better, if you move faster. So I think in the same case with a marriage, you need to erase. You may not be able to erase all the memories that you had in the past, but you need to remind yourself that there's a new standard that you're starting. So
yeah, there's a new standard, and it's okay to cultivate the relationship the way that you and your spouse wanted to look. So having that communication and saying, okay, not what I was okay with before, but what I want our relationship to look like. What do I want us to experience? What things may have bothered me that, I want to make sure I don't have to experience in our relationship because I want our foundation to be solid. I want it to be healthy. Right. So what was the other thing?
Oh, I don't know. Outside of that,
Hold on, I had it written down.
Yeah, she has an outline. I like scripts.
We were just talking about this.
It was funny. I'm waiting on you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, while we're waiting on the beautiful and lovely Rachel Scott to look at her phone, but going back to that, you guys, we definitely have to, as men, we want to lead in that area as best as we can. And sometimes when we fail to lead, wives, you have to step up and lead in that area, or you have to step up and remind us to lead in that area. Because once she actually told me, it made, in my mind, it made sense. Because just logically thinking about it, like, oh, yeah, that do make sense. I shouldn't judge it based on stuff that happened in the past and saying, well, I'm not doing that, so I'm doing better. Right. Like, no, I've set a standard here to where I want, or here, wherever it was at. I'll set a standard at a certain point that with dating and everything else. So if I am going to judge it on anything, I should still go back to the standard that we've set. Yeah. And then if it was a bad standard that was set, then in the beginning with us, then we still can reestablish even with our past relationship, we can reestablish a bad standard.
So and the other point I want to make concerning just the marriage being better than you think is the idea that just because parenting aspects of things may not be going so well does not mean that your marriage is not well. So there are times, more often than not, that we have to separate those two, because things can be going wacko when it comes to the parenting, the co-parenting, the step-parenting, the just parenting our children. And our marriage can still be healthy. And so in those moments, I have to choose to separate, okay, my husband from the parenting aspect of him. I can feel like our marriage is going really, really well, but when it comes to this parenting thing, we may need to discuss things as parents a little bit differently. So some people may agree or disagree, but I have found that when I choose to look at situations that are occurring as, is this a marriage issue or is this a parenting issue, and I deal with them separately, then the frustration doesn't intersect as quickly.
Right, and so, I know that could be challenging because those things kind of just, especially...
Hi, Kenneth.
Hey, especially when you have kids, you're married, you have kids, all that stuff just blends together. Right. But you have to be really intentional with separating those things. So, and one of the ways that we started to be really intentional with separating those things is by establishing a date night. We established a date night that we set a standard, we put it on the calendar, and we even had a conversation with the kids. Over time, they start to look at it and be like, hey, when you guys going out? Where are you going for date night? Right. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, we want to go. We want to go. Like, no, you can't go because I'm taking my wife on a date.
And so we model that in front of them that, okay, you all have a lot going on, but the time that my husband and I have together is specifically for us. Right. No, you cannot come. No, we're not even going to have this conversation. So I think that in trying and recognizing that your marriage is actually doing well, sometimes when things are just really, really rough with the parenting, you have to establish that line and say, okay, how is our marriage doing? Is our marriage healthy? Is our marriage getting better? And okay, this parenting thing we're going to work through, but right now, we have to separate the two. And it doesn't mean that you don't parent together. Right. You're going to continue to parent together. But there may be some areas of his parenting that I just do not agree with. But should that affect how I view him as my husband? Not necessarily. That just means that I want to be able to communicate with him on how I feel about that area of his parenting coming from another parent, coming from the person that he's parenting with. Right. So a lot of times we intersect the two, and then it makes the marriage very, very difficult to even remain in because the parenting things are difficult.
Because we're taking that frustration that we just had regarding, I don't know, whatever the consequence was supposed to be or whatever happened or however we handled the situation with the kids. We're taking that and we're bringing it into, well, this is I didn't like what you said, you didn't like what I said, so now we're upset with each other. Right. And so now we're going on date night upset, or now it's falling into the marriage when we have to actually sit down and say, okay, and we have to work on this too, but sit down and say, all right, this is a parenting conversation. Right. This conversation is in the parenting box.
not in the marriage box.
And not in the marriage box. And it's not going to spill over. We're not going to allow this to spill over into the marriage box and make an intentional decision to say, okay, once we have this conversation, we're going to set a time. We're going to talk about it. If we don't come to a resolution, then we're going to choose to come back and do it again tomorrow. And
that takes practice.
Yeah.
So there's grace in that. That takes practice to be able to intentionally sit and separate the two, because it can be very frustrating. It can be very overwhelming.
Right.
And especially when the reality of it is that you only have one spouse, but you may have 3 or 4 children, 2 or 3 stepchildren. So the parenting role seems like the more dominant role, but the reality of it is the most important role is our relationship with our spouse.
Right.
So we have to be willing to separate it, because quiet as kept, one day the kids are going to all be gone. And we're going to have each other.
Right.
And when that time comes, we want to have established something healthy between the two of us, that we're excited for that to come.
Right.
We're not lost trying to figure out what to do next. Who are you? I've been with you all this time and have no idea who you are, because I was so busy parenting. And it's hard, especially when you may have come from being a single parent, and you're entering into a marriage relationship, or you've come from just these other dynamics of parenting. If you come from not having any children, and now you're adopting children, it can be hard to keep first things first.
Right.
But that is so important. Your marriage is key to just having a healthy family household. If the marriage is suffering, then the household is suffering.
And you'll even notice it when you go on date night. You may notice that, because we did that often. I know I did, but she was better at kind of, okay, this is our date night. Right. Separating work, separating parenting, because it seemed like all the conversations were about work, or on my end, all the conversations were about work or about parenting. So it's like, hey, with the kids, oh, they got gymnastics, they got this, they got that. Oh, well, we need to work on this. We need to get this magazine done. We need to get these things done for work. But just sitting down and saying, how was your day? Or what do you think about this? Or what do you love best about me? Or just different questions. Sometimes you find yourself in the beginning, because I know for me it was a challenge in the beginning. It was easy to think of those things.
Right.
But then as you progress in the marriage and you date less, or you're not as intentional with having conversations individually with just you guys, then you tend to lose. You're like, man, what else can we talk about? Or what else can we do? If we're not talking about parenting or work, then
what are we talking about?
But you have to be really intentional. And there's a lot of resources out there that you can look up. You can just Google things. And he
loves Googling questions.
Yeah, I will Google stuff in a minute. So you can Google it. But we also have a resource where it's a dating your spouse resource. We just have some date ideas of things to do. Because sometimes it's challenging just to figure out what to do to go on a date. So we
let me say this to the ladies, is that sometimes we have to lead in order to be led in that area. So if dating is just something that you really desire more of, then start developing ideas, and then your spouse will know what you like. What kind of dates do you enjoy? What are you willing to do? But if it's just like, I want to go on dates, and that's it, and it's been something that you haven't done, not based on, okay, we used to date when we were dating, but just really just based on, since the marriage and all the dynamics change, we are all changing, we're all evolving, we're all growing. So I may not even like the dates that I used to like when we were courting each other. I may want a different style of dating now. And unless we're communicating with our spouse what that is, I know for me, it took me a while to even give suggestions, and I still struggle with that because I'm still kind of figuring it out. But I'm more open to trying new things now than I may have been in the past. But, you know, those things help to cultivate your marriage and help it to become healthier, and just being patient and being willing to say, okay, in this area, I'm going to lead until I'm led. I'm going to give him ideas of things I like to do today. I'm not just going to get frustrated at the fact that he doesn't know what I like, because I've done that.
Right.
Like, and you should just know. But
and for men and for women, I would say, because women take into consideration that because we're more task oriented, then we'll think back, or we'll figure out something that you like or what you like to do, and we'll do those things. And then it could get boring to you because we're like, well, I know she likes this, 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 and this, so I'm gonna rotate between these 5 things because I haven't seen that she liked anything else just yet. And so that's where it's important to come in and to not say, oh, we did it already, that's so boring, you can't think of anything else, because then that just frustrates him or discourages him, and then he feel like he can't, and then that stuff kind of cycles around. Or so pretty much what you would say was, hey, oh, that was really fun, well, that's a really good idea, but you know what, I was thinking, let's try something new. Can we try to look at something like this? And when you say something new, like what you just said, try to be specific, because in our mind, something new is we go back to what do you want to eat? And then you like, it doesn't matter. And then we pull up and you like, I don't want that. And then we like, okay. Then we pull off and we go to another, I don't want that either. And so it's like,
I'm not difficult.
So you do know what you want to eat. Well, you may not know what you want to eat, but you know what you don't want to eat. But to us, what that does is just causes some frustration. It's like, you said it didn't matter, so I'm picking something, and now you're saying that's wrong. So it's teaching me that I'm making the wrong decisions on your behalf. And versus saying, hey, that was a really good place right there. But let's try something. Let's try something new.
Yeah. I don't know if that ever changes, because when you ask this is a rabbit trail to return back to the point, but when you ask like what I might want to eat in that moment, it really depends on how hungry I am. Have I thought through, like, I'm responding to the idea that I'm hungry,
right, but
not sure what I want to fulfill the hunger.
The eating part is just an example of,
I know, I just had to elaborate on that some.
I just wanted to use that as an example to show how our brain works. How my brain Shannon, works.
Picking a restaurant is the big one.
The picking a restaurant is cool. We can deal with that, because we know at the end of the day, we know that when you say
he says that, but when we're in the car, he's like,
I just keep driving. I just drive to the next one. I don't even get frustrated now. I just drive to the next restaurant. And at this point, I know which one she gonna say no to. Unless I'm tired, I just pick it anyway. I know she's gonna say no. But most of the time, I know what she's gonna say no to, so I just keep driving. I don't get upset. I just drive until she say, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'll think about that. That should be okay." Or I just drive until she gets tired, and when she gets exhausted, she just pick anything. So at that point, we're okay. So the restaurant part was not the point. The point is that we tend to get discouraged if we're not encouraged. Right. So that's what I was saying.
The point was about dating and encouraging them, and just and just letting you know that you're making good decisions.
Right.
And all of that is about your marriage.
Your marriage is not as bad. It's not as bad as
but little things like picking out restaurants can make it, because then in my mind I'm like, he doesn't even know what I like.
Right.
You know, so it can fluff up into something bigger, because I'm thinking, do you know me well enough? And those are the things that can happen. Like, even me having to repeat things.
We thinking, do you know yourself well enough because of the fact.
But even me having to repeat things. So Willie and I have gone through this frustrating moment where I had to repeat everything to him. And I kid you not, it drove me crazy. And I'll just sit there like, am I talking? Maybe I'm hearing words come out of my mouth, but nothing's really happening, right? So because I was just repeating everything. And eventually I had the conversation with him and communicated with him my frustration. I don't know if that conversation was like, hey babe, you don't really listen. I don't know if it came out that way, but I had a conversation with him about, it might have been more like, you don't listen to me. When I'm talking, you don't listen. Maybe I shouldn't talk. So that was probably how. But we got to the end goal.
It was more like, you don't listen to anything I say. Nothing. I have to repeat everything.
Yeah, that sounds like it. But what it did make me realize is I began taking inventory of what I could do. And this goes back to just, your marriage is better than you think. The fact that me repeating it twice, but eventually he listened, was a good thing. But I realized that I would start talking to him in the middle of him doing something. Or I would not fully engage him during certain times. So maybe that was part of the reason why he wasn't able to fully listen to me. I kind of always interjected in the middle of him talking, or him expressing something, or just simply me not being sensitive to that moment. I didn't stop and say, hey babe, are you able to listen to me right now? Can you hear what is this a good time for me to share this? And sometimes it would just be because I'm excited. Mm-hmm. But in that moment, I started thinking, he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't hear what I'm saying. What I'm saying isn't important to him, and I had to take inventory of what was I doing to maybe block him to giving me his full attention in that moment. And there were times where I would just start talking. I would start talking, and he wasn't even aware that I was even talking to him at moments. And I think that happened quite a bit. Like, I would just start talking to you, and you were like, wait, what happened? I'm like, you don't even listen to me. But I had to take inventory of my part in that, and realize that, okay, it's not that my marriage is bad. I'm just not communicating well. I'm not being sensitive to the moment. And so now I'll be patient and just kind of wait, like, well, tell me when it's a good time to talk, or
Right.
are you free right now? Is this a good time? Are you in the middle of doing something? All of those things that were happening before that I wasn't even paying attention to because I just wanted to get my point across.
Right. And then on my end, what I actually had to pay attention to was the fact that since I'm a server, I just try to be at her beck and call, if you would say. So, no, but honestly, I'm just, it's not as bad as it seems. But saying it to the point that, I mean, I do honestly want to be available when you call. And I want you to feel like I'm available when you call. And I want you to feel like I drop whatever I'm doing when you call and listen. But the reality was that me being in the middle of something, my brain didn't transition. And so I would have to, by the time you start talking, I was still thinking about something else I was working on, or the kids. And so then I had to say, okay, can you repeat that? So right. What I had to do is realize that I have to honor you, and it's honoring saying, well, this is not a good time right now.
Right.
Versus me always trying to say, yes, 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 babe, yes, babe.
Right.
And then I'm not, because it just made you feel like I wasn't paying attention to you, or I wasn't listening. So
right. Lisa said, brave parents, white sofa, and 5 kids. I'm sorry, that was all. Yes, Lisa. It was his idea, just to put it out there.
Dude, now, what man I don't even pick. Who pick out the furniture? I tried to pick out the furniture. She like, you will not. Your area's over there in that corner. That's what you got. Put this together.
No, I picked out the furniture. You were like, it does look nice in the room. Okay, I'm sorry. But yes, everything you just said. Yes, yes, and yes. So at the end of the day, we just want to encourage everyone that sometimes you look at your marriage and you can be like me and you go open up this marriage book and you're like, my marriage needs all of this help because it's ... And you realize that maybe my marriage isn't as bad as it seems. Maybe there's just some areas that I really need to take inventory of myself, or that I need to better communicate with. And it's okay to have different expectations than the past. Am I putting this the right way? Yes. It's okay to have those different expectations because you kind of know what you want to cultivate in your marriage. You know how you want your marriage to look.
Right.
And for those of us that have been remarried, or we've been in relationships and we have children that, we brought into the marriage, we've been in other relationships that there was something going on with that relationship possibly. I mean, sometimes the marriage just simply ends because of the loss of a spouse or right. a loved one. But in those areas, I think that it's safe to say that cultivating what you want your marriage to look like, cultivating your own healthy marriage is good, and that it's not always as bad as it seems. In my mind, I felt like he wasn't listening to me, so it just seemed like our marriage was bad. But the reality of it was, like I said, I wasn't being attentive to the moments that I was trying to interject my conversation. I wasn't right. paying attention to what else he had going on, and so that clouded my mind because I just believed that he wasn't listening. But when I had the opportunity to sit and talk to him, I realized, okay, I'm not taking into account all these other things.
Right. So you have to be real intentional. You have to be very intentional, because it's not having a good marriage or a great marriage is not just going to happen by itself. You actually have to put in some work. You have to pay attention, and you have to identify the problem areas, work through them, communicate properly, and move forward and let go of the past issues. So.
Yes. So we want to encourage you. Thank you for checking out He Said, She Said today.
Yes.
Of course, you can always read blogs, listen to other podcasts by going to betterthanblended.com. We have our YouVersion devotionals on YouVersion as well. So those are a great resource for you. We provide mentoring. We just try to do whatever resources we can find to just be a blessing to everyone. That's what we try to do. And we don't have all the answers, but what I love to say is that we are walking the journey with you, and we're right. talking through things together, and we're just sharing what we're walking through with you all. So thank you for joining us. Do you have something else to say?
Yes. The last thing I want to say is we would love, and we invite you out now, we would love for you guys to join us in October 5th and 6th, for Beyond Blending, a conference for blended families and marriage. So we are going to have some dynamic speakers.
Yes.
We're going to actually
have fun.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of communities.
She's planning a lot of stuff.
Everyone there will be, within the blended family dynamic to some degree. They've experienced blended family life. Right. And so if nothing else, you'll find community there. And I'm telling you, I'm living through this walk with community for the first time in a long time. And I've had so much peace and being connected to community that understands being a part of a blended family, that understands all those dynamics. So you and your spouse, you need this. You cannot afford not to be there. Right. Your marriage is key. Your marriage is priority. So it's about going beyond blending. We're going to talk about things that are not just focused on the blending aspect of things, but we're also going to help cultivate those blended family areas that are sometimes challenging that you just need to dial in on a little bit.
Right.
So you do not want to miss this. It'll be at the Doubletree in Beechwood, Ohio. Make sure that you join us. Make sure that you're there. Your marriage is going to be happy that you did it.
Yep. So,
all right.
Guys, we appreciate it. And, the link we'll put the link inside of the text for the conference so you guys can click it and get to it. So,
all right. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.